that camera.
Right, okay.
Yeah, she's okay.
Michael's not coming?
Here,
My,
how to give us a printout of the office? These extras.
Thank you.
Get it, Sal? You ready to go? Ready to go? Ms. Gruhl, ready to go?
Whenever you're ready.
Right.
Thank you.
I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, February 7th, 2012 meeting of the Township of South Orange Village Board of Adjustment. May we have a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Don.
Here,
Mr. Scala.
here,
Mr. Groman.
here,
Mr. Parlapiano. Mr. Reeves.
Here.
Mr. Semper.
Here, please.
Mr. Adler.
Here.
Mr. Shapiro.
Here.
And Ms. Werwin.
Here.
Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, PL 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by publishing the annual notice of regular meetings for the 2012 in the December 2012 2011 edition of the South Orange Maplewood News Record, and by filing said notice in the office of the village clerk. So the first order of business is approval of minutes from the December 6th meeting. Do we have any questions, concerns about those minutes?
I have a question, Mr.
Yes.
I'd sent in some edits, and I know you had a question, and Mr. Scala made some changes, but that was the last I heard. I didn't get I don't think I got a revised minutes. Did that go out?
She sent out a revised.
yeah, I thought one went.
Yeah, I got it. I didn't get it, or maybe I just missed it. So were the changes made?
Yes, the changes were made. Do we have any comments? So we had the revised minutes. Does anybody have any problems with the revised minutes? I looked at them. I didn't have any, no questions.
No, I thought we picked up all the changes.
Okay, may we have a motion to accept the revised minutes?
I move to accept them as changed.
We have,
Second it?
okay.
Okay, Mr. Don.
Yes,
Mr. DeScala.
Yes.
Mr. Groman.
Yes.
Mr. Reeves.
Yes.
Mr. Semper.
Yes.
Mr. Adler.
Yes.
Mr. Shapiro.
Yes.
And Ms. Werwin.
Okay, next order of business is oaths of office for the board members, and this, I believe, is Mr. Groman and Mr. Shapiro. And I think this has to be read on the record this year.
The clerk's asking us to have this formalized this year, so if you could do it on the record, and if you could sign on behalf of your notarized, anyone who has signed theirs.
There's a error in the way mine was printed. It says South Orange Planning Board.
Change that.
maybe you got a promotion.
You come 2 nights,
Right.
2 nights a month.
Okay, so we'll
Double your
change that, and then we'll have you all read it simultaneously.
So you get different names.
Well, okay, so you start your name first.
Right. I'm Michael D. Groman.
I, Robert Shapiro.
Okay, now read together here.
Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey.
I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States
And in this state, under the authority of the people, I do further solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties as a member of the Township of South Orange Zoning Board according to the best of my ability.
So help me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, the next is swearing in of board professionals.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We're going to ask, try to cover all the bases this year, that our board professionals be sworn in. We're going to try to do it once at the beginning of the year and have it last for the whole year long, in case there's any instances they're giving factual testimony as opposed to opinion testimony. So, if you want to raise your hands. Do you swear that or affirm the testimony you give in all the proceedings before this board for this year through the next reorganizational meeting is true?
I do.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we move on to the real business this evening, which is case 994, applicant Valley Barbecue at 311 Valley Street. Preliminary site plan and final site plan. Applicant proposes to change the use from retail to restaurant and takeout. And just before we get started, remember there is a last item on here about the discussion of the annual letter that we sent to the Board of Trustees and Planning Board. So at the end of hearing the applicant, don't run out. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Michael Bertone on behalf of the applicant, Valley Barbecue. This application, as indicated by the chairman, proposes to change the former retail use of the property to a restaurant takeout, a barbecue restaurant. The proposed use is a permitted use, although a conditional permitted use. The village appropriately maintains restaurants in this zone as a conditional use because of concerns over proliferation of fast food restaurants. Regrettably, we fall under that statute, 92-216 of the ordinance that characterizes this application as a fast food restaurant. It was certainly not a McDonald's or a Burger King, but nevertheless, we have to either comply with the conditions for the conditional use or obtain variances therefrom. The application also contemplates a number of bulk variances, which, for the majority, we have no control over because they're all existing conditions at the site, which the applicant proposes to grant. I would like to have the architect of the project sworn at this time.
Good evening.
No, I don't think we did. We swear you in last time?
Believe so.
We did? Okay. Can you state your name?
The name is Rui, R-U-I. Hello, better? Better? Okay, now it's better.
And just a reminder, both of y'all need to speak into the microphone. It's very directional, and so we may have, if you fade away, we'll have to remind you to go to the mic. Okay.
The name is Rui, R-U-I, and last name A-M-A-R-A-L, Amaral.
Do we accept the credentials of the architect?
We qualified them last time.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Amaral, you are the author of the plans for this project?
Correct.
Okay. Can you give the board a brief overview of what's contemplated here?
This property is located on Valley Street. It's basically like 85 feet away from Lackawanna Place to the right side, or say northeast. The current building is currently, as it was mentioned before, it's a mixed use. The building is 2 stories high. So on the ground floor, it was used previously as a florist shop. So it was like a retail usage. And then on the second floor, we have one apartment. It's a 2-bedroom. It's a small apartment on the second floor. The property is located on the B3 zone, the third business district, and we need a set of variances, and most of these variances are existing conditions. So no matter what usage the building is used as, we always have these issues, such as lot area. In this zone, the required lot area is 30,000 square feet. We have 7,000 square feet. The property is 35 feet wide by 225 feet deep. It's sort of a narrow lot, but long. It has a right-of-way exit onto Lackawanna Place at the rear of the property. Behind this property, I believe is the same owner, they share a driveway. So from Lackawanna, you can drive in and access, come around through the back of the building. The lot width, as I mentioned, it's 35 feet. The required is 200 feet. So we also need a variance it's an existing variance that's at this property. The setback required is at the front of the building on Valley Street. The required is 15 feet. The existing is 5 feet 8'4".
which is another variance that's required. And the side yard, in a B3 zone, we need a 10-foot side yard setback. The current building is 0.98 on the left side and 1.54 on the right side. And again, these are existing conditions. Currently, when you look at this property, the property to the right is a park, and there's an existing fence that's basically almost 2 feet over. So along the right side of the property, there's like an alleyway that's about 3 feet wide that somebody can walk through the back. So the residential people on the second floor, they come out through the front door, they go around through the side alleyway, and they access the rear parking spaces. And then the other variances that we need is this lot coverage. The required is 35%. This property is fully occupied with paving and park and building. And again, this is an existing condition. So, as I mentioned, the building is a 2-story building. In the back, we have a parking or a paved area that we are proposing to basically stripe the property and provide 5 parking spaces along, one of them being a handicap space, and along with a new trash area enclosed with a fence, a wood fence, a 6-foot high fence, and as a walkway that accesses the restaurant through the back of the building. The entrance to the restaurant would be on Valley Street, and again, this is an existing, as if we look at the picture, it's an existing storefront, so we're not really doing anything to the building on the outside, other than putting a new canopy with signage. So the existing building will remain as is. The only work that we need to do is basically interior work. On the interior, we will be providing a new kitchen, so it would have 2 fryers, a range, and a barbecue pit.
Excuse me, we want to mark some of these exhibits.
Mr. Bertone, can we mark those?
Yes.
We have it. We have it.
Page 1A1.
I know, but if they're being used, I want to have them marked. Okay, so the front page of your plan submitted, which are dated, what's the date on it?
Plan is dated October 3rd, 2011.
Right, that'll be,
You have to speak it to the microphone.
Page 1, marked A1.
yes.
Of that same plan, I'd like to mark page 2 as A2.
That's it.
Not to be difficult, but sheet 1 should really have a revision date, because we got an earlier submission that also is dated October 3rd. I have a feeling sheet 1 should have the same revision date that sheet 2 has.
Correct. I was just...
Correct.
Yes,
Because we
absolutely.
shouldn't be referring to October 3rd.
Good point. What's the date?
That's correct.
12/22/2011.
Thank you.
So, with reference to A2, Mr. Amaral, you are referencing the interior kitchen proposed improvements.
Correct. As I mentioned, we will be installing a new kitchen, a new workstation, and a counter and again, this is mainly takeout place. We will be creating a new bathroom and then reconfiguring the rear into a working kitchen. At the front area of this restaurant, we will be providing 20 seats. That would be 2, 4, 10 tables and 20 seats.
Would you clarify for the board the manner in which the fumes are going to be exhausted from the restaurant?
The exhaust of the hood will go through the rear of the building behind the basically the kitchen area. And if we look on the elevations, at the rear elevation, you can see that there's a duct that will come up at about 8 feet above ground. It will go up and it'll exhaust up out to the roof. Once it gets to the roof, it'll bend in slightly towards the middle of the building it needs to be 10 feet away from the property line. That's a code requirement.
With respect to the parking, my understanding of your testimony is that five spaces are proposed. Now, is there an allocation of those spaces between the restaurant and the residential use, the one apartment that's on the second floor?
Well, we have a handicap parking space that will be provided for the restaurant, and then we will be marking the 2 further spaces for residential, being that since we need the handicap space near the building, and these 2 adjacents can also be used for some deliveries of materials in the morning, so then these 2 spaces near the building would not interfere with the sort of the service.
Okay. How does the applicant propose to dispose of garbage and debris?
Well, this would be a private company. I believe he has some paper that shows a private hauler, but basically we would be providing, we will be building a new trash area with an enclosed fence, a 6-foot fence, so this would be enclosed. And the storage, the trash bin would be on wheels, so it can be rolled out and out to the street, to like a Warner Street, and there the truck can just pick it up. Behind this, along this driveway, there's an existing body shop nearby, and they park cars, so to have a truck go through this driveway, chances are it's not going to work, unless they're not working in the morning.
Are you aware of any intention to put garbage out on Valley Street of any type?
No. There is also parking along Valley Street. One of the variances that we need is parking. The required is 41, 39 being for the restaurant and 2 for the residential. We have 5 parking spaces.
Would you clarify for the board the means of ingress and egress? If the project is approved, how will patrons of the restaurant access the restaurant, and how will patrons of the how will the second floor apartment get in and out?
Well, again, the residential parking spaces, I mean, currently this is the way they use. So this is an existing apartment. They do park through the back, so they come through Lackawanna. These 3 parking spaces would just be for customers, basically.
Okay, what I was referring to, how will the customer access the restaurant walking in?
They will go down Lackawanna Place, and get to the driveway, and then turn in.
Okay, but if somebody's on foot, can they access the restaurant from Valley Street?
Well, at the front of the store, they can go around, or they can also walk around the parking lot. But chances are, they're not going to do that. If you want Valley, you just go right in.
Okay, can you just show the board where the entrance and exit is for the restaurant?
It's in the middle of the building. So if we look at on page 2, A2, I mean, there's an existing storefront in the middle of the building. There's an existing door, and then the apartment it's sort of recessed from the street level, and there's a door that goes to the second floor.
Does the tenant need to go through the restaurant in any manner to get to his apartment?
No, it does not.
Mr. Amaral, I'd like to address, and the board, I'd like to address the conditional use requirements. Now, am I correct in my understanding that these use requirements are generally predicated for a fast food restaurant?
39 parking spaces for a small place. I mean, it's a little bit high, it seems. This is also, as we've mentioned, the intent is mostly for takeout. So I believe one of the parking spaces will be at the rear that they will be coming in and out.
Do you have an opinion as to whether the literal enforcement of the ordinance would be practical for this site?
Well, I've done a number of these restaurants. Three parking spaces just for this store is a little bit low, but since there are parking spaces along the street, along the front, the street is mostly mixed use. There's not a whole lot of residential other than across the street, and they do have some parking. Every time I've been there or we have visited, along the front of the building, or in this area at least, along our side, there's always parking spaces available. So the owner or our client, he feels that it's okay. The parking will be enough.
The ordinance, the strict ordinance requires that the lot line for any fast food restaurant be at least 500 feet away from any residential area.
Correct.
How does
Well,
that impact?
Across the street,
1,000, Mr. Bertone.
residential
I think
zone,
it's 1,000.
1,000.
It's 1,000 from any residential area and 500 from another fast food restaurant.
I stand corrected, you're correct. It's 500 from the driveway and 1,000 from residents.
Right. Well, across the street, on the first sort of, say like 100 feet, or the first property in, it's a B2 zone, but right behind it, then it starts to become residential. It's an RB zone, so we are within 125 feet, 150 feet, we would be into a residential area, a residential zone.
Is it your opinion, so there's a variance required for that?
Correct.
Section. Is it your opinion that that variance would impose any particular hardship on the applicant?
Well, Valley Street is sort of commercial, retail, service usage along the street. So I think it blends well. There are actually a few other restaurants nearby, being to the right and to the left. So I think the usage is appropriate. And actually helps out because if it's near residential, people can actually walk to pick up food there, let's say.
The fast food ordinance, if I may refer to it as such, requires a driveway of 25, not less than 24 feet, no more than 30 feet. What is the applicant proposing here?
Well, as we mentioned, there is a right-of-way along the rear of our property that acts as like a one. This right-of-way is 10 feet wide. However, when you go there, you see the driveway is more than, or what is accessible, it's actually wider than 10 feet. But that's the right-of-way. That's this existing condition.
The ordinance requires a minimum distance between driveways to be 100 feet, measured from the two closest driveway cuts. Can you detail what we have?
Yeah, this, I know to the left, or say to the right side of our driveway, there's no curb cuts all the way into the valley. I believe to the left, there's another driveway further down. I did not measure the distance, but I would suspect that there is one within 100 feet.
Fast food ordinance requires a circulation system, drive-up windows, and the like. Is that applicable to this project?
We have no driveway service.
So you do not, there's no queuing requirement?
Correct.
You've discussed the trash removal. Do you have an opinion, Mr. Amaral, as to if this board grants this application, whether the approval of this application can be done without substantial detriment to the public good?
Yes, I believe so.
And if the board were to approve this application, can it be done in a manner that's not substantially consistent with the zoning plan of this community?
Sorry, I missed that one.
Excuse me, we didn't qualify you as a planner.
We're just wondering if Mr.
No, I'm not a planner.
It's not a problem.
So why don't we avoid testimony about whether it will impair the zoning ordinance, et cetera. He can talk, he can say whatever he wants.
The board can give it whatever way it wants.
Yeah. But not as a planner. We qualified you as an architect. Just wanted to remind people about that.
In short, Mr. Amaral, is there any possible way that this site could further comply with the strict enforcement of the fast food ordinance?
No, we've done the best we could. So,
I have no further questions of the architect.
Okay, thank you. So we'll open it up now to members of the board to ask questions of the architect. Who would like to start? Mr. Don.
Could I ask Sal a question first?
Sure.
Okay. So, just so I understand it, because I read through this and I see the parking requirements for fast food, I understand that. What is it that makes this a fast food eatery?
If you look at the definition of a restaurant, it doesn't fall under the definition of restaurant as a sit-down table, plates. It's basically a takeout, and the ordinance doesn't. The ordinance needs some work, and that's something we'll talk about later. But the ordinance doesn't really allow for this type of use. It's kind of the in-between the restaurant.
So a restaurant would be
fast food.
sit-down, waitress service?
Correct. Right, and then
As opposed to these seats,
to
which are, you may buy it at the counter and eat it there?
right, or you order it, you pick it up, that type of thing. It's kind of in between. It's kind of in limbo.
So
And
like a Stoney's in town would still be considered fast food, because there's no waitress service and...
well, they're supposed to be. What ends up happening is in situations like this, because the ordinance is very strict in its definition of a restaurant, and most places don't. The fast food ordinance, the way it's drafted, is really geared towards the drive-up window, pre-made food, things like that. I suspect that, we'll probably get testimony from the owner later, but I suspect that this is going to be a made-to-order type restaurant. You call in, you place your order, and you pick it up. There may be some pre-made, foods
Okay.
and things like that. So it's kind of an in-between, and that's basically why they're here. So when you get to the parking, and that was one of the things that I was going to touch on. The fast food restaurant has a very restrictive parking requirement. The 39 spaces that are required for a fast food restaurant greatly exceed the number of spaces that would be required if this was a standard restaurant. For a standard restaurant, they would require about 10 spaces. So there's a huge disparity there between the two definitions, and there's nothing in between in the ordinance. So unfortunately, because this is a counter service and it's not waiter service, it's most likely going to be plates, takeout type thing. It falls basically under the fast food type definition, but unfortunately they don't meet the conditions of that fast food. And that's why they're here.
There is a definition of fast food in the ordinance, if y'all want to hear it, and I'll read it, but it sounds correct. Fast food restaurant. Public eating places where prepared food and beverages are available for on and/or off-premises consumption upon a short waiting period, and orders are placed by the customer at the counter and primarily served in or on disposable wrappers, containers, or plates, and where wait service is not available. This does not include restaurants that have takeout as accessory to a traditional restaurant.
So,
That muddies the water.
Right, so it
we're
basically
hanging
makes a
our hat
regular
on-
restaurant has elements of a fast food, and fast food can have elements of a traditional sit-down restaurant.
And there's no physical requirements associated with it. So the fact that this has 20 seats is immaterial. But if they were to say they were going to have wait service, then it would suddenly change.
It would change. I mean, they're still non-conforming for, you know, a lot of, in a couple of the other different areas and things like that. But it's not just wait service, it's plates, it's, yeah, you know, there's the definition that the chairman described. I mean, they would have to meet all of those requirements for a restaurant versus a fast food restaurant. So I think on the safe side, it kind of falls more under the fast food restaurant side, so they're here before the board to get that approval. My recommendation would be, should the board look favorably upon this application, that there be conditions placed on this application that might limit the possibility of a much larger, more, yeah, I don't want to specify any specific types of fast food restaurants, but a more standard fast food restaurant
A chain
from coming
oriented.
in.
Right.
Right.
High volume, yeah, right.
Correct. You know, perhaps limiting the square footage of patron space. Basically, they have just under 600 square feet devoted to patrons, so maybe you put a condition on that, that's the limit, you know, of square footage for patrons, you know, that type of thing. You know, basically falling into the plan, should you agree with the plan, but limiting the possibility of another fast food restaurant at some point down the future, you know, coming in and saying, well, we already have a variance for a fast food restaurant here, we can put whatever we want.
And tear down the building and put a new one in its place?
Well, then they're going before the board. Once you tear down the building, then it's a different animal, but moving into the
expanding
building.
the square footage of space doesn't seem like much of a possibility here without doing something like that.
Right, but one of those types of fast food restaurants would be looking for more space. Perhaps putting a restriction on it, you can't have a drive-through. I mean, they buy the property next to them, they already have, you know what I'm saying? They could do expansion. I mean, there's certain things that the board needs to consider, you know, with the application. I think this particular application, this is just my opinion, I think is okay. I don't think there's any glaring issues, you know, facing the board on this application. I think what they're proposing, you know, falls within, you know, the area. I don't think it's, you know, a real stretch, but there is that potential that if once it gets a variance for a fast food restaurant, that another a larger chain type restaurant may come and look at the property and try to, you know, squeeze in, let's say.
Okay, so, all right, thank you. A couple of questions. So, is it maybe I heard it wrong. Is it your testimony that customers are going to use this parking in the back?
Correct.
Really?
Where are the employees going to park?
Well, they'll address this later, but it can be both. I mean, we're not necessarily intending on limiting anything, especially like, say, a handicap parking space.
Well,
I mean,
let's
that's a
talk
customer
about
thing.
that next.
Yeah, the idea would be mostly, I'm assuming, would be more that the customers will just park on the street, and this parking in the back is basically going to be, say, like if somebody's a handicapped person, then they will tell them, okay, you can park back there. Let's say when they call up and place an order, you know, they can be notified, okay, you can park in the back. Parking is provided at the rear of the property. These two additional parking spaces, chances are they're not going to be using, unless somebody's familiar with the place and they've been here many times, so they know, okay, when we come with a family, you know, we can park over here while we eat, while in the building. Somebody that's going to come and pick up food, they're not going to park in the parking lot, pick up, and then leave. Most likely, they'll park on the street.
I think 99% of the chance they're going to park on the street. Let's talk about I'm trying to understand this handicap parking, because if you find that spot, which I'm not sure how you would actually do that, there's not an accessible path that goes from that parking spot to a doorway.
Yes, yes, it is.
The slope is way, way bigger around
it's-
that building.
No, it's not. I mean, it's a little bit difficult to tell from this picture, but this is like on the second picture on the top. I mean, it goes up a little bit, but it's not over 1/12. I mean, it's gradual, it's not,
Well,
it drops
I
more.
don't want to
up-
get into the technical, but if it's greater than, if it's greater than 5% slope, then it's a ramp, and then it needs rails.
But this is not a ramp. When you get in this area back here, especially close to the building, it's not a steep drop. It drops further down at the bottom a little bit more. Let's say even when you look at the driveway here, yeah. But near the building, it's sort of, it's not over 1/12, it's not. And there's a path along, like I said, along the right side of the building, there is a sort of walkway that's over 3 feet, and that's all paved. And that's.
So they would come
you
all the
can
way
walk-
around to the front of the building,
Correct.
in theory. Okay. Well, I don't have any other questions.
Why don't you ask about, because you probably understand, ask about the easement or
Oh.
access?
Yeah, the right-of-way, is that's not an easement, correct? It's a right-of-way that goes with the property forever and in perpetuity? Because it's going across a piece of property that's owned by the same guy that owns this property.
In this case, yes.
So if these are ever sold, if that other lot is ever sold, lot 14, the right-of-way is still there. It's a deed restriction.
Correct.
Okay, so is that actually recorded in the deed?
Yes, it is.
That's an existing condition.
Has it existed? In
Yeah.
other words, this isn't something that's being added to the deed?
Was
now?
not created for this application. No.
All right, so it's not an easement, it's a deed restriction, which is better because it can't be eliminated as an easement could.
I think,
Well,
Are these non-conforming lots right here? Are they non-conforming lots? Because if they're non-conforming, then they merge as a matter of case law.
They're developed, though.
But if they're non-conforming and they're owned by the same owner, they merge as a matter of case law. If the town,
But they're developed.
I was just saying that if they're non-conforming lots, then they merge as a matter of law
I don't know if
anyway.
I don't know if it's,
So I don't know that the easement matters.
I don't know
I
if
don't believe that's the case if the lots are developed.
Isn't that only residential, though?
I don't know.
I think it's only residential, and if they're undeveloped, they can.
If one of
Okay.
them is undeveloped.
If they're undersized,
Yeah.
jointly owned, and become commonly owned, yeah,
And they're residential only,
Yeah,
it's
no merge.
restricted to residential?
if they're unused, if they're undeveloped.
Oh, okay.
Getting back to the easement, the right-of-way,
Yeah, I would just like to know if you have that.
if we get a copy of the deed the deed that the easement or the right-of-way is on, just provide us a copy
Provide
just to make
Copy,
sure.
please, Mr. Bertone.
And,
Yes, sir.
So that could be a condition, if we decide to approve this, that would be a condition that would be demonstrated?
I would recommend that would be a condition, only because they are showing that some of the parking in the back is to be used for the proposed use. And if there isn't, if we don't have proof that there is that easement or right-of-way there, then they may not always have that access.
I
So
recall that
considering
we
the variance.
requested that in the conformity meeting.
Yeah, it's shown on the plan, it's shown as a right-of-way, but I would suspect it's actually probably an easement. I mean, right-of-way typically refers to a public land, public
A road.
right-of-way.
Right, exactly.
A roadway, or an alleyway that might be publicly
Or
owned.
road right away, usually.
I don't have any other questions, Russ.
Rusty, I have one for Pat on that. If it's in the deed, if it's a right-of-way in the deed, and the servient property and the burden property and the property in favor, and whose favor it is, are owned by the same person, even if it's there, couldn't that person just get rid of it?
Not if it's part of the condition of approval.
But I mean, as far as the deed is concerned, if I own two properties, and one has an easement in favor of the other,
Sure.
I can get rid of it, just by deed.
With perhaps one exception. That right-of-way, well, actually could, because he's got
frontage.
He's got frontage. Does he have enough frontage for that lot to remain a lot, or would he make it more non-conforming?
It would be more non-conforming.
Right, so he wouldn't be able to without a variance.
But if it's going to be approved, it'll be part of the condition of approval, and then it's binding on the property owner, who's ever there.
Okay.
I'd like to just make a comment and then ask a question about the parking and the lot. I drove over there today myself, and I drove into the lot, and when I see on the diagram 3 cars parked along the left-hand side as you drive in, and possibly 2 cars here, that is going to be very challenging to get in and out of that lot, because the lot was completely empty when I drove in, and there's not a lot of room to back out and turn around, and nose out of the driveway again. So it seems to me that the cars parked in the driveway, another car pulls in, they're going to have to be backing out of that driveway. Would you agree?
Yes, it is tight,
Very tight.
yes. They actually park a lot more cars than what we show back there.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't see customers accessing that lot. There's plenty of street parking.
Correct.
Just as in your diagram, there was plenty of street parking on both sides when I drove up about noon today. And I wouldn't want to go into that driveway if there were cars in the lot.
Correct.
There's no plan for a sign or anything out here directing people to park in
No,
the
no,
back?
we're not,
There's
we're
no-
we're not providing unless
Right,
it's,
so
I mean,
so practically speaking, the parking in the back is really going to be the employees and the tenants of the apartment?
correct.
Yeah, I
Well-
think practically speaking, customers are not going to pull around and try to park back there.
No, I don't see that.
That concrete block garage, does that belong to the property, and is that parking?
Yeah, it is a garage. It's basically kind of locked. The owner uses for whatever, but that's not part of their lease. So the owner just kept the garage on, like, it's not part of our agreement, or that we can use.
So that doesn't count, okay.
I have another question.
Mr. Shapiro?
Again, based on the tightness of that lot, and with the concrete block garage at one end and the building itself in the front, and there's this drop-off on the right side and the fence on the left side, what is your plan for snow removal if there's pretty heavy snow? I mean, where are you going to push the snow to? And how are you going to get a plow in there to do it?
I believe the owner provides, he's a landscaper, and he provides snow removal, and so I think he has equipment. So,
I mean, like, where are you gonna
that I know
where
of,
are you
it's
gonna
not.
put the snow?
Oh, that's a good question.
Where are you going to put the snow?
I'm not
You
sure
don't have any
what he
room?
does, but I'm assuming he just removes it completely. Because again, he also owns the property like along that wide driveway, so maybe he pushes down at the bottom. But again, he has the equipment, so he does it.
Be an issue.
Other questions? Mr. Adler?
You testified that there's always parking spaces available. How could you testify to that?
Commissioner, I'd like to call the owner, who has taken some photographs at various times, to address that further.
Well, that's fine, but this man testified.
I understand.
There's always parking space available, and I want to know how he could testify to that.
Mr. Amaral, have you frequented this site
Yes,
on different times of day?
correct.
Have you witnessed what's the parking is available on Valley Street?
Yes, I mean, I've parked in front of the building. Every time I go there, I park in front of the building. Now, theoretically, can we say Is it possible that one day the street will be completely filled? Yes. Is it? Normally, that's not the condition, so normally there are some parking spaces, and I believe they have done several counts and all, so they will show a little bit more information on that.
But the commission's point is that your testimony that there's always parking available may not have been totally...
Theoretically, you could say that's not possible, but the times I've been there, and I drove on the street many times. I mean, this is the main way that goes, actually, right from here, I have to go to Madison, I have another case, and I'm going to drive right by it. And there are always parking spaces available. Could I stand here and say always? Well, there is a possibility that one day it will be filled. But normally, that's not the case.
Other questions from members of the board?
I have one other one. Is anyone going to speak to lighting?
We are showing a few spots, so there will be, I believe, 3 lights that I'm showing.
5.
Yes, 5. Two on the building and 3 along the driveway, along the side.
Are these mounted on pole?
Yes, on the driveway, yes.
Because these don't look like fixtures that would be mounted on a pole. They look like fixtures that would be mounted on a building. If in the lower left corner of that drawing, that's the light, correct?
Yes, you can put those on poles. These they're relatively small. They're not like.
They're 10 foot high. It says.
Is there a problem with them, Mr. Dunn?
Well, I mean, I can't tell if there's any spill onto neighboring properties. I mean, obviously, where it's up against the building is probably higher than 10 feet. So there's really only one fixture that's up against, that could spill over to the neighbor's property, is my concern. I don't know if these fixtures have any sort of back shield on them. Because they're not traditional parking lights. These are very low lighting, because if you look at those foot candle circles,
Correct.
the innermost circle right at the fixture is 2 foot candles. So these are more like walkway lights as opposed to parking lot lights. So in a way, I mean, it's good. It's going to be a low level of light back there, but I don't think there's any back there now that I mean, I wasn't
No.
there at night, but
I've been there at night, it's dark, very dark.
Rusty, I have a quick one. You spoke about the canopies to the front. Do you have any dimensions on that?
Well, the building had, previously there was a canopy there. We're basically replacing the canopy. The canopy is approximately, it's approximately 16 feet wide by 2 feet 8 height.
So it's not running the entire front of the building?
No, it's not.
So it's only probably over the front door or
It's basically over the store frontage.
just over? Okay.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some form of lighting in that?
Well, yes, it will be interiorly lit. Yeah, again, this area is a little bit dark along the street, so yeah. There's actually, I'm showing the three spotlights above the sign area. And these again, these are existing, they are there already, the boxes, the light boxes.
Excuse me, Mr. Arnold, did you say there are 3 on the building?
Yes, currently, there's 3 boxes there. We're just
You said
basically...
You had said there were 2,
The,
but it should be
the
3.
lights, the lights have been removed, but the boxes are there, so we'll be replacing the light fixtures.
Mr. Super, anything else for that?
No, that's it, please.
Mr. Adler?
Do you know what the prevailing wind is in that area?
The prevailing
Do you know what the prevailing wind is in that area?
Commissioner, I'm not sure I understand the question.
The question is, does you know what the prevailing wind is? Which way the wind generally blows in that area?
Exactly, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if I want to say one thing and then be told, what
No, no, if you-
happens again, you know.
It's okay if you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's okay if you don't know. My concern is with the closeness of the residences, which way that the smoke is going to be going.
Oh.
Have you considered that?
Well, within our block, this is all commercial area. To the right of our property, it's a park. Then we have the street, and then on the opposite side, there are some residential areas here, and then there's a body shop, there's a restaurant, there's, you know, this. So this area is mostly in commercial area.
The building immediately adjacent to this building on the south?
On the right side, there's two residential, and one of them is a mixed use, and the one on the corner is just an office, I believe, medical office or something.
Right, so you've got a residence immediately
Correct.
adjacent to the building.
Correct.
Okay.
And then across the street. So this area, I mean, and behind us, our property, like I said, it's commercial, and then there's the railroad tracks in the back. So the smoke is not just like on a large residential area. Yeah, there are some mixed use, but that's what this area, you know, is like.
Bob, if I can get to perhaps the point of your question is the prevailing winds are from west to east. That's just the way it is. So any fumes would blow, you know, in some fashion that way towards the residences up, you know, up in the, across Valley Street. But the 1,000-foot distance between a fast food restaurant and a residential area, is there, I'm asking this of Mr. Rinda, or the architect if he knows in our ordinances, or our expert, is there a different requirement if it's just a restaurant that you have to be 1,000 feet away? I don't think there is.
No, there isn't.
Okay, so that 1,000 feet requirement has more to do with traffic.
I suspect that's why it was drafted. Susan could probably answer that better.
Ms.
Yeah,
Green?
I think that Sal spoke very clearly about this hybrid of this. This is really the intent or the standard is the nature of fast food restaurants is
Okay,
more.
we can't hear you, you need to speak.
I'm
to the
sorry,
microphone.
is more intense generally. This tends to be more of a hybrid because it doesn't have the drive-through, and there are seats, even though it technically doesn't comply, and the impact tends to be more in terms of traffic and circulation and other types of impacts that tend not to necessarily be associated with your traditional restaurant. So this 1,000, I don't recall why these standards are in the ordinance specifically, but Sal is probably right. They were related to the traffic circulation and having too much intensity in one location as such.
You know, to help clarify things, I'm looking here at our ordinance on fast food restaurants, and there are a number of items that relate to essentially traffic and congestion. For example, they talk about the minimum size lot of 30,000 square feet, and that it won't be within 1,000 feet of any residential district. Entrance and exit driveways. shall have unrestricted width of not less than 24 feet to avoid people having to back out. Minimum distance between driveways on a lot with the fast food restaurant, it has that. The minimum distance of any driveway into the street shall be 100 feet. Lanes for automobile service windows being separate from the traffic circulation. And then we've already talked about the parking ratio. So my reading of these items is that there was great concern by the folks who created the ordinance in fast food restaurants that if you're going to put in a big fast food restaurant with drive-through, that you got to have enough space to do it and then it not impact upon residential areas.
Well, if you think about it, it's probably hard to find a spot in town
Right.
where you wouldn't be within 1,000, yeah, if you're in a business zone where you wouldn't be within 1,000 feet of a residential zone.
Well, why do you think it was written that way?
It's just like towns that don't want medical office space, they make the parking ratio.
Well, I mean, that's what our ordinance is, and that's the people who voted the people in, so, that's what we're dealing with. And that's, we have to consider. So that should hopefully, give you some sense of.
Well, the question that I heard had to do with prevailing winds. And I don't know, we got the answer to the prevailing winds question, but part of it had to do with the height of the chimney. Is there testimony with regard to how high above the roof that the chimney extends? Is it just a basic 3 foot above the peak?
It's code, yeah, it's basic code.
Code, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I have one more question about the chimney. There's a disconnect between the letter that we received with the package, with the updated information. The letter says, and I believe this is from the attorney, it says that the ventilation from the kitchen will go through the ceiling, vented through the roof, right, I'm sorry, which would be interpreted by me meaning it's going into the ceiling, which would also translate it going into the apartment above. And that's not what's going on. You've testified. It's going outside, going up, pitching back in, and then going to code above the pitch of the roof. Okay. Thank you.
Pitch and away from the property line.
Okay.
Okay, before we move on to our expert for questions to the architect, do any members of the board have questions for the architect? Okay. Ms. Brewer, do you want to have some?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. At least the way that I read the plan, and it appears as though the fence on the right side, I'll use the term, on the north side of the building, where there's a sidewalk, is partially off the site. Is there an easement that is?
No, there is no easement there.
Okay, so it appears as though the one side yard is only 1.5 feet,
Correct,
correct?
correct.
Okay, so that it has been operating that way with the sidewalk. I'm just clarifying that.
Correct.
That is partially on the village property in the park.
That entire fence, if you look on the survey.
Yes, that's
is-
what I was looking for.
Is about 1.5 feet off the property line anyways.
Right, so I just wanted to clarify that right at this point, that is a
Correct.
condition that
It's an
has
existing
been
condition.
used, but is.
Correct.
Okay.
So let's be clear, because I'm not clear. So you're saying that sidewalk may not be there, it's town property?
It is now and that's what I think the testimony is, encroaching and has been encroaching on the town property. It's off their site.
Okay, so we as the board should not consider that a sidewalk around from the back of the building, that it's going to be there in perpetuity.
I think that's a legal issue that, that Patrick will have to address, but it is definitely not a usable sidewalk without encroaching into the adjacent village property.
Well, if it's encroaching on village property, do we have any say in in remedying that, or is that our responsibility?
Not really, unless there was a direct impact from this application on it.
It's the park that's right next to it.
Right, it's the park.
I think if there was no other
There was no
means
other
of
access, then,
access
yeah,
to the
it'd be
site,
an
then
issue.
it would be an issue.
Is that where the handicap parking is supposed to go on the sidewalk onto town property?
That's,
No, that handicap
Yes.
goes the other way, right?
No.
Oh, that's, they were intending for the
That's
handicap to use that sidewalk, right?
Well, if they don't use the sidewalk, if I understand, the building is 1.5 feet off the property line, right?
Right.
That's correct.
So you couldn't get,
You wouldn't be able to get handicap access across
not
there
able to
anyway. So practically speaking, the handicap access, should that little sliver of land go away, would be down the driveway, through the right-of-way / easement, out to Lackawanna Place, and all the way around.
enough valley.
Yep.
well, the question becomes, is the handicapped access more appropriate in the public right-of-way and the parking
Right.
on street?
Right, but they don't have jurisdiction to designate a handicap space on the street.
Well, then
so-
that was going to be the
Right.
next question. From just a practical perspective, it appears to me that it would be more appropriate to be on street.
In which
And
case the
direct.
applicant would have to
I,
apply for a permit in order to get that.
Oh, they'd have to get approval from the county as well.
Right.
well,
That's what
I
I meant.
know, that makes it more difficult.
Right, and
I know that.
they'd also have to put in a handicap ramp, accessible ramp.
Curb cuts.
Curb cut.
Well,
curb
right
cut.
now, I'm not sure that, and the board, if the board is looking favorably on this, you may want a little bit more information on exactly how it complies, not as a condition, how it complies with the handicap accessibility rules in terms of the ramping and such.
Well, I don't believe the ADA would require them to put a handicap space in a public right-of-way. It does require them to designate one space for every 25 in a parking area.
One
You know,
for 25?
One per 25.
Well, then
One-
is
So
it
if there's
required?
5, do they have to designate one?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, you round up no matter what. So if there was 20...
So if there was 2, they'd have to designate?
If there was, yes, if there's 26 spaces, they would need 2. So, I mean, that's basically how it works. So they are technically meeting their ADA requirement for parking. Now, as far as accessibility to the building, the parking space is supposed to be the space closest to the accessible entrance to the building. That's where the issue of the little swatch of land that they're encroaching onto the village park comes in. I mean, right now, it's not the closest, it's almost the closest space. I mean, they have to provide the aisle, the width adjacent to it to make it a handicapped space. They need the van accessible 8-foot wide open area, which they have adjacent to it. And it is a direct shot. It's not really any farther away than the space right next to it. And to come around in that direction, but that could go away at some point.
So then you would say the ADA requirement would be they have to designate the back space, because then that would be closest to going down driveway up Lackawanna, up Valley to get to into the building.
If there's no other access to the building, there is a doorway into the back of the restaurant, isn't there?
Yes.
There is a back door into the restaurant, but that is not for public use.
Goes to the kitchen.
It goes into the
It
kitchen.
goes into the kitchen.
Plus it's now ramped in that area. I mean, it could be ramped, but
So they're very limited in what they can do.
It's a catch-22.
Well, look, we can't, we can't give permission to a right-of-way being on town property. We just can't do that. But can they designate the parking space in back as the handicapped space? But people are not, in reality,
If you're handicapped, you're going to park in the front.
handicapped, you're going to park in front.
Practically speaking, yes, unless they have a handicapped employee, in which case that would be, that employee would enter into the kitchen, from the back. I mean, is it ramped
Right.
to the kitchen, or is it
the
steps?
back, yeah, there is a step also inside the
How
building.
many steps into the building from the back parking lot?
Oh, no, there's one step outside, I mean, but it would need to be ramped
Right, so
to do it.
it's about an 8-inch step, or?
It's a little bit more, I think.
Okay.
And then inside the building, there's also a step from the kitchen to the dining area. There's also a step there too. And again, that would be. we
From
would
the
have
back
to put
area?
another-
Okay.
Yeah.
Can they designate that rear space as a handicap spot? Is that the way to get around this?
The difficulty with that is they need the aisle adjacent to the handicap space. You would need a minimum, basically, a handicap space is 8 feet with an 8-foot wide access aisle adjacent to it. So you would need you would need to designate 16 feet. I mean, technically speaking, they could do that. They could stripe it so that there would be no parking in that area. As long as it's open, it needs to be, quote, van accessible, in which case,
So if they stripe it, there are.
if they striped the area adjacent to that space and made it clear that there was no parking in that area, it could be a handicap space.
Okay. And there's no way around this. This is required. This is, there's no exceptions for a small site of not having handicapped spots.
Not that I'm aware of.
So if it's only one spot, it's handicapped.
So,
Correct.
So that's something that y'all, as we're going through here, you need to think about now as to whether you would want to basically give up 2 spots to make one handicap spot, and whether this board
No.
would approve that, right?
No, they wouldn't be giving up 2 spots. They would just be taking the handicap space that's behind the building, shifting it to the space closest to the drive
Right.
access, and then the area to the north of that space,
Uh-huh.
the open area to north of that space, they would just have to stripe it
Oh,
so that you couldn't, because conceivably, when there's employees and residents parking here, there could be stacked parking,
okay.
practically
So you'd
speaking.
stripe it.
So they'd stripe it so that nobody could park in that area, and then that would become van accessible.
Sounds like a reasonable suggestion, y'all.
Do you follow? What- Making this the handicap space and then striping an 8-foot aisle
Yeah.
adjacent to
Yes,
it.
yes.
Okay.
Just a couple of other things, if the board is inclined to approve this, I would suggest that the applicant provide the cut sheets for the light fixtures, both on the front goosenecks and I would suggest that, I agree, these are wall-mounted light fixtures on the side. They're probably better to be light fixtures, wall-mounted light fixtures, so nobody starts driving into those, and whatever cut sheets there are on those wall fixtures too, the light-mounted fixtures.
Okay, I'm missing what your actual request is.
The specs, the
The specs are the details on the lighting.
on the light fixtures. This
poles and that.
information is
Inadequate.
generally
Uh-huh.
there, but it doesn't really give you the details as to
Well,
exactly.
what are we looking at? If they're gonna provide this, is there something that they need to provide in order for us to approve this, like foot candles or anything like that?
That's up to you. I think that at this point in time, they've shown the foot candles on the site plan at this point in time. I would assume that, and maybe you want to ask, or I'll ask the architect whether the cut sheets on these types of fixtures would be consistent with the foot candles that you show on your site plan,
Correct,
correct?
correct.
So you would just need as a condition, if you choose to do that, that would be the cut sheets, the specifications of those lighting
Well,
fixtures.
those details were taken from their website. I mean, I can provide the whole sheets, yeah, the whole thing, the whole information.
As to the materials, the color.
Correct. Yeah, those basically white fixtures and then the white casings.
Okay,
So,
that's,
So if we're asking them to I guess what I'm confused is, if we're gonna ask them to specify the light fixtures, there's no point in asking them, if anything they propose is okay, why ask them to specify? What is it that we're looking for in that specification?
you're asking exactly what I just said. What are the materials? What's the color? What you are looking for in terms of the type of fixture.
What are we looking for?
Well,
I
that's
didn't even consider the issue of light fixtures.
So we didn't get any information on the front ones, what they
Right.
look like. So if we want to see what those gooseneck fixtures look like, that would be one thing.
And you don't have that information here.
I don't. But those are just standard, like,
Those existing?
No, they don't exist. The boxes are
they
there,
used,
but the
they used
lights
to be
are
there,
not.
but we
I
will
see.
be installing new ones.
There used to be the lights there, but they're not there.
Do we particular care what light fixtures that they use? Is that relevant to us? You know, as long as they're not too bright and you specified, why do we,
I don't have.
Yeah,
a
it's
burning
just a
desire to
sign.
See the ones in the front.
am I missing something here?
Well, some boards tend to be very interested in what those materials and what the light fixtures look like. Oftentimes, you can just approve it subject to the village engineer approving it as such.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear, because,
Thanks, Susan.
Yeah, I know, I thought you'd be happy with that.
all right, so Sal, basically, as long as they're basically.
Yes, if they
appropriate.
submit, as long as they submit cut sheets and the Isolux patterns, and the cut sheets based on the pole heights that they're proposing, the 10-foot height, I think it was 10 feet that you're proposing.
Yes.
Matches what's approved by the board. It leaves it very open in the type of fixture, but again, these are in the back of the building, in the back of the parking lot. So unless the board has concerns about aesthetics in the back of the property, then, I have no problem reviewing those. As far as the goosenecks go over the awning, there are limitations in the ordinance regarding lighting, external lighting, things like that on signs, awnings, things like that. I would just recommend that any condition regarding those would be that they just meet the current ordinance regarding that. And then I just had one other, do you have anything else?
Go ahead.
Just regarding the sign, the awning sign that's on there, the ordinance allows awning signs, and they're allowed to be on the lower one-third of the awning, which it's hard to tell because of the pitch on the awning, but they're allowed to take up the lower one-third, and there's a limitation of it. But that's only if there isn't a drop flap. If there's a drop flap, then the lettering has to be on the drop flap. So I would just recommend that if the board's okay with this, that they just make sure that the awning conforms, the awning and the sign on the awning conforms to the current ordinance, unless they're requesting a variance for something different.
The owner has to apply for a permit, right, a sign
Yes.
permit?
Yeah,
So-
but I mean,
so
what's
all the
shown on
time-
the plan, you're getting an approval for a
Okay.
plan that shows something that's not exactly the way
Okay.
it's supposed to be in the ordinance. I just want to
Is-
clarify that.
Is it your intent to comply with the sign ordinance?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
We're
good.
not coming
There
back
you
here
go.
for another sign
I think
variance.
so. There you go.
Okay.
I just have a question, one other question about the garage and how, so the garage is going to be used by the owner?
The garage is not part of our lease. It's the building which houses the restaurant, the designated parking spaces. So that garage is not leased to us.
The catch-22 here is the concern, and why I raised it is, if there is going to be traffic and trucks and whatever that may come in and out that are not, have nothing whatsoever to do with your lease, but are on the area that may impact your operation, then I think that that's important to be able to know, because this board, the last thing you want is to have,
3 uses on the property.
another use that it appears from these photos that there are quite a number of large vehicles that are parked around the site in the back there. Is it the owner's intention to not use that rear portion for?
I cannot say, but I know the building is not being used other than the residential. So I don't know if he's just parking there. There are parked cars that I've seen on that lot.
Right.
that belongs, it looks like the gas, the shop uses is throwing the cars in there. So maybe because it's not being used, maybe they put the cars there. I mean, I cannot, that's the only thing I can say.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that you
Correct.
can't speak for the owner, and I
Correct.
know that, you know, you're leasing the property, but I think you can understand the concern that there may be other activities that are associated with the garage and whatever else the owner may have going there.
Basically a third use on the property. You have the residential, the restaurant, and then a garage, that, you know, unless the garage is part of the lease for the tenant upstairs, is that,
Well, maybe we should take testimony from the owner on
Is
what
the-
that garage is for.
you know, is the owner here? Or-
The owner's not here.
No.
I only have one comment. I have another meeting somewhere else. Is any other questions that I could maybe leave? Architectural?
The public might have questions.
Does the public have any question for the architect? Okay, Come forward. State your name.
My name is August, like the month, Celletti, C-E-L-L-I-T-T-I, and my family owns the two properties directly adjacent to the proposed site. One is a two-family residential home with a parking lot that, basically a garage and a driveway that is right adjacent to the proposed parking area. So I'm not sure about the lighting, overflow, whatever you guys are talking about. I'm not sure what the ordinances are. I could tell you, growing up in that area, since about 30 years ago.
We need you to focus on questions for the architect.
Yeah.
You get your statement at the end.
All right, great. Well, my first question is in reference to the 20 seats that we're talking about in the restaurant. How can it be a takeout if they have 20 seats? And what is the real intention here?
As we had spoken, this is more of a mixed, we do both things, in other words. There are some seats in case somebody stops by and wants to eat on site, but the intent is mostly takeout. But otherwise, this would have been like 40 seats.
Yeah, I understand. Well, just like in case the parking area up front was never occupied, what if you do get 20 people, and where are they going to park, along with the takeout patrons that you may have come in?
I don't know if the owner wants to address any of these, but chances are, now, not each person will bring a car, but will there be 20 seats, 20 people and 20 cars? It's a possibility, but like I said, I mean, it's a long street and there is quite a bit of parking, but... And there's parking on both sides of the street also, just another mention.
We referenced ventilation and the wind flow. Our two-family house is about 3 feet from this site. I can't see, and I'm currently having issues renting the second-floor apartment, just because no one seems to be interested, but you put something like this in there, where is all this smoke? It is a barbecue restaurant. How much smoke are we talking about? I know of other barbecue restaurants. There's one on Springfield Avenue. There's one, I think, on Burnett Avenue. If you drive by there, the smoke is intense. And it's not,
Can I
yes.
just ask you what properties it is that you're talking about?
313 Valley Street,
Right.
the two-family home, and then
Right.
the property right after that, 315, 317 Valley Street.
Thank you.
My question is, how much smoke are we talking about? Given what I know about barbecue restaurants, I know it's a lot of smoke. And I have to disagree with you in that most of that area that we're referring to is residential. Across the street on 308 is my uncle. Right adjacent to him is the Cardone family. Adjacent to them is the Trucone family. And it goes all the way up to Academy Street. Adjacent to that, there's another one single-family house across from Lackawanna on the same side. There's numerous residential properties. And directly across from the pizzeria is a Seton Hall dorm. So I really don't know, when you were referring that this is primarily a commercial area, I have to disagree. I don't think that's correct.
That was a question.
Yeah, I mean, he stated that this was mostly a commercial area, and I'm trying to get that cleared up because I don't think that it is, and I just want to know where he's getting that information from.
I have a question for you. So that pizzeria, isn't that like a Jamaican or Caribbean restaurant now?
No, the pizzeria is the old Sunrise Pizzeria. I'm not sure what it's called now.
Where is that? Where is that?
That's if we're looking. I didn't have the luxury of looking at a map here. But if you're looking at the property right in front of you, it's to the left. You cross Lackawanna, and it's 2 houses down. So it's less. I don't think it's more than 1,000 feet from the property.
Okay, so that would be within 500 feet.
You have the,
Okay.
I think you have the guys with the big limousine service and.
And that's on the corner. Yes, correct.
Okay. Thank you. All right, do we have any other questions from the public for the architect? I'm sorry, I thought you were done. Go ahead.
Any comments on it?
No, the way we do it is you'll get your chance to make comments after all the experts have questions asked of them.
Okay, thank you, good night.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so we move on. Do you have any other?
Just briefly, the owner, the applicant.
The applicant. Okay.
Mr. Bertone, there's, as you may know, a possibility that at some point the board may want to ask your architect another question, in which case it's not going to happen tonight, apparently.
I beg your pardon?
It's not going to happen tonight, apparently. Just giving you that warning.
I understand. Thank you. All right.
My name is Ornani Teixeira.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give is the whole truth?
Yes.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Ornani Teixeira.
Can you spell that?
Ornani, H-E-R-N-A-N-I. Teixeira, T-E-I-X-E-I-R-A.
Could you spell that again, the last one?
Last name, T-E-I-X-E-I-R-A. Teixeira.
Like a baseball player?
Safe spelling.
Okay.
He has given me that.
There you go.
Mr. Teixeira, you are the principal of Valley Barbecue?
Yes.
Okay. I assume that you've been to the site on numerous occasions in connection with this application?
Yes, yes.
Have you had the opportunity to take pictures of the parking conditions on Valley Street?
Yes, yes, a couple times.
Mr. Chairman, we've submitted these photographs to the board. I'd like to have them marked, and I have extra copies. Mr. Teixeira, here's the 4 photographs. Can you identify that, please?
Yes.
What is that?
I think from one side, from one side, so from the south, I take one picture from one sidewalk to the other, and from the opposite side to the other. And I did the same thing from north to south and south to north.
What time of day was that picture taken?
4:45 p.m. on January 11, 2012.
Mr. Bertone, you need to use your mic.
You can carry it with you if you wish.
Mr. Teixeira, what time were those pictures taken?
4:45 p.m. on January 11, 2012.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to mark that A3, the set of photographs, and I have copies.
Yeah. We already have these.
Yes, I
Okay.
Okay. And, Mr. Teixeira, I also show you photographs. This set of photographs, can you identify them, please? Did you take those
Yes,
photographs?
Yeah, I took these a different day, 2011, 12 p.m.
At 12 p.m. noon.
Noon, at lunchtime, by lunchtime.
When you took those photographs, both at noon and at 4 p.m. on different days, what did you observe as far as parking on Valley Street?
I'm sorry?
What were your observations, if any, as to the parking conditions on Valley Street?
I mean, the parking is always like this, you know, I don't see too many cars.
Have you been to the site at different times, different days of the week?
Yeah, I went there, you know, a lot of times. And the parking mostly the days are like this, you know, it's no cars parking in the street. It's a lot of parking spaces.
Okay. At any time that you visited the site, have you observed that there were no parking available? Have you ever seen it where no parking?
I always have parking, maybe, you know, 1, 2 cars, you know, different days, different times, you know, but mostly the times are like this.
Okay.
I don't choose the time, you know, to take a picture without cars, but, you know, I went there these days and no cars, that's why, you know, the picture came up like this, no cars.
All right. Do you, a question was raised as to whether there's going to be more eat-in customers or take-out customers. What are your intentions with the restaurant?
Really, it's more takeout, you know, more takeout.
Okay. I have no further questions for Mr. Teixeira.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for the proprietor? Mr. Simper?
Do you have any other restaurants like this? Is this your first?
Yes, this is my first, yes.
So you can't say whether you're gonna have more eating or takeout?
More of the takeout.
Why would you?
I got one close to me. I live in Burnett in Union, right over there. It's close to the Burnett barbecue.
Same type of restaurant or?
Yeah, mostly, yeah, the same one. I live over there. I don't see any problem over there. I live on 2046 Dorchester Road. It's like a couple of blocks down. You know, very close to the. We don't have any problems over there.
Mr. Shapiro?
What do you expect to be your hours of operation?
The years, the hours?
Yes, what hours, what are your expected hours of operation?
10 to 10, 10 in the morning to 10 in the afternoon or at night.
How late in the evening?
Yeah, 10.
How late? 10 o'clock?
10 o'clock,
10?
yeah. Yes. Or maybe 9. Maybe 9, you know, close at 9.
5 days, 6 days?
You know, the 7 days.
7 days.
You know.
Thank you. Mr. Descala?
One more.
Oh.
One more, I'm sorry. The staff, how many staff members you're gonna need to run the place?
I'm sorry,
How many-
I don't stand to.
How much help do you think you're going to have?
Oh, first it's like, you know, it's a family. Me, my wife, and maybe my sister-in-law. And it's like 3 people.
All right. And each one coming, each person coming with a car, or you guys?
No,
gonna come
no,
together?
no, all 3 in the same car.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
That's it, I'm sorry.
Mr. Descala?
Just, what method of barbecuing do you intend to use in your establishment? Dry smoke, grill?
No, or no, natural, you know. Grilled, just grilled, no smoke.
Okay, that's,
No smoke.
it's a very popular kind of barbecuing. Use a smokehouse barbecue. It's a dry
No, we
rub
don't do, no, we don't
versus-
do that smoke, no, no
Okay.
smoke. We try to do the less smoke we can.
Well, you can't
You
get
know.
away from it, but it's just a different method. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Teixeira, where's the pizza place relative to your property?
The pizza place, it's after the La Cuanda, right? It's like the third house or second house after.
I think it's 329, Rusty.
Yeah, I don't know the number.
329.
It's three
I think
something.
it's the third property down, past Lackawanna.
Oh, it's like one, it is the third.
Okay. All right. What else did we? Okay, I don't have any other questions. Mr. Adler?
Mr. Teixeira, when's your busiest time of day?
I don't know yet.
Well, you,
But, no, it should be in maybe lunchtime, like 12 o'clock in the, noon, maybe.
You
I
don't-
hope. Usually, the others, I see, the other barbecues, at lunchtime,
they
12
don't do,
o'clock.
they don't do a big dinner business?
The future, we don't know, maybe. But, what I'm thinking is, lunchtime, at 12, and maybe at night, like 9 o'clock, 8, 9 o'clock at night.
What, 8, 9 o'clock would be a busy time?
I hope so.
But busier,
That would be good,
busier than, say, 5:30 or to 6:30?
Maybe not, because it's a lot of factories over there and a lot of, dealers, car shops and mechanic shops, and maybe it's more for the lunch, I hope, that's what I think.
Any other questions? No questions from our expert? Do we have any questions from the public? Questions at this point. You'll get your chance to make comments. Okay, no questions. Okay, thank you. Are you through with your presentation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, did you want to sum up, or let us go ahead and talk among ourselves? Any,
I just briefly to sum up, we come before this board with two major sets of variances. We have the conditional use variance, which we've discussed at length. I mean, most of those requirements under the fast food statute are really not applicable to this kind of an operation. The other set of variances we're coming for approval are the bulk variances, the lot size, etc. We have an existing use. We're not creating any of those exceptions. I think that this is a B3 zone. The board is well within its authority to approve the application. We think, as far as the positive criteria, the literal enforcement, particularly of the fast food statute, is not practical in connection with this operation. Connection with the negative criteria, I think that the board can approve this application in that it does not going to have substantial detriment to the community, and it's certainly not inconsistent with the city's plan or zoning intentions. For those reasons, I would ask the board to approve the application.
thank you. Okay, so we'll take now comments from the public before we talk among ourselves. Do we have any comments, statements?
My name's Gianni Caliciotti, C-A-L-I-C-I-O-T-T-I. In reference to the
Mr. Cagliotti, can you give your address, please?
313 Valley Street,
Thank you.
first floor. In reference to the parking in front of the space that you guys have pictures for, those are just random days. I lived there and I've grown up there for 38 years. It's a jam. There's cars all the time. They just happened to have caught it when there was no cars. In reference to the garage in the back, it's always been rented, and it's still rented right now. I know the person who rents it, okay? Don't let them tell you any different. And the smoke, and if it's anything like the Burnett barbecue that he's referring to, is a ton of smoke. I've eaten there, I've seen it. It's an open pit with a roof, with a fan, and there's spits like this that they throw water or whatever juices on, it smokes all the time. Those are my comments. Keep them in mind.
Can you tell me when is the parking now?
All the time. There's cars there all the time. There's tow trucks, there's landscaping trucks, there's a 30-car lot,
Are you
used
talking
car
about-
lot across the street.
Are you
that-
talking about on Valley Street?
On Valley Street. I lived there and I grew up there, and it's gotten worse through the years. And you guys want to put more cars there.
He left on the UPS trucks.
Yeah, the UPS, that's their spot. That's their spot. The
Sir.
UPS trucks park in front of that building.
Is your-
All the time, I see it. I
Is your
mean, I live
experience
it.
in front of the park, are there cars
In
parked
front of the
out?
park? No. Not many there. From where the park ends to the pizzeria, all the way around the Lackawanna place, there's nothing, there's no parking there. There's cars everywhere. It's a jam. They'll never park in the back. There's
Thank
too
you.
many trucks. There's tow trucks everywhere. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. We have other comments?
Yes, I have some additional comments. And I don't want to stop a business, especially in these times, from operating, but this to me just isn't a practical use. There's numerous issues that I have with this site. First, I'd like to talk about the proposed parking by traveling along Valley Street, making a right onto Lackawanna Place, passing my parking lot, which I am constantly chasing people out of, then going around Up and Running, which is a mechanic who's also associated with a tow truck company. There's cars coming back and forth all day long. Then you have to make a right into this proposed, I'm not sure what we called it, an easement or whatever it was. If you go there during the day, and I believe Mr. Shapiro mentioned that he was there is no room to get by. Euro Technicians operates a very successful mechanic. They work on foreign cars. I've known them. They've been there for 30 years. They park wherever they can. Up and Running, he's actually begging me to give him spaces in my parking lot, which I can't do because they're occupied by my tenants. I also own the house directly next door, which has a driveway, and I can assure you that people will be parking in that driveway. As they did when it wasn't a florist shop, by the way, it was a wedding or favors type store. And most of the business that she did, who I know personally, was either through the mail, internet, or she would order things and deliver them herself.
Let me ask you a question along those lines. So people were parking there when it was a weddings favor store. Isn't that just the fact that you now live in a business district and doesn't matter what will be there, the people will be
No,
parking
I think you
in...
misunderstand. My point was that she didn't have a lot of patrons coming into the store. That's my point here. A lot of her stuff was deliveries. Now, I do have two tenants, and occasionally they're going to park their cars up in the front of this house. And there's one parking space there, one parking space directly in front of the proposed site on Valley Street. The rest is the parks. And recently, there have been some families using the park, believe it or not, which surprises me. Hasn't really been used in many, many years. And going back to the Lackawanna thing, I just don't see how that's going to happen. People are going to park out on Valley Street. They're going to occupy spaces that my tenants need as well. When someone is dropping off a dog to get a haircut, they have one space ahead of there, and there's a yellow, what is that called? The curb is painted yellow from about 315 Valley Street all the way to Lackawanna Place.
But isn't there parking behind 315, 317? There's about 10
Yes, there
cars
is.
back there, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
But at times,
And the property at 313,
Yes.
there's a business in the garage?
There's a windows, it's more of a warehouse. They just store, I forget what they call these,
But there's a
stained glass
stain-
windows.
But there's, but it's not a garage, it's,
It's not a garage.
okay. So there is a business on your property?
Yes.
Okay.
And as the gentleman pointed out before, the garage that you were referring to on the same property is rented by a landscaper currently. And I know that because he does some of my work. I just don't see, it was mentioned that there were 5 parking spaces on Valley Street. I don't see where those parking spaces are. I really don't. And quite frankly, I was called, and it could have been the same gentleman here, to ask if I was willing to rent my property to a barbecue. And I didn't think it was the right thing to do. Not in that neighborhood. You know, it's, and the smoke is going to be an issue, I can assure you. And I didn't hear anyone talk about a sprinkler system. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Is there one going in for a barbecue? I'm not sure.
In the hood, there would be a sprinkler
Yeah,
system.
if approved, when they apply to the building department for all permits to improve the building, the code would require the sprinkler or ant cell system
I
in
would
the
hope so,
kitchen area.
because, I mean, the fire starts there, both houses are going up.
Yeah, the board doesn't rule on building code issues. That's handled by the town. They're just dealing with the variance at this point.
And I would hope that the residents of our village know in the event that they are going to be using a piece of the park or village property to gain access, especially for handicap purposes. Now, I could tell you along that fence, growing up in South Orange, in that backyard for 30 years, I actually fell off a cherry tree behind this property or proposed site, that there are graves along that site, possibly going into the site that we're talking about here.
It used to be a graveyard.
Yeah, it used to be a graveyard. And it's also not paved, so I don't see how, are they going to pave it? How are they going to line it? As far as snow removal, Mr. Shapiro, that lot has never been plowed. Never. And I don't see where the snow is. I know that what I have to do at times, I have to hire a truck to actually carry the snow out. And I can tell you, I have to agree with the gentleman again, that, you know, at certain times, now, if you're taking pictures at 11 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock in the day and 4 o'clock during the day, yes, you may find some empty spots. But people don't come home from work until 5 or 6 o'clock. That's when they start getting occupied. On weekends, you can't find a spot. During lunchtime, Mr. Semper referred to UPS trucks and FedEx trucks. Yes, they're there because they're eating at the pizzeria. It's a hot spot. And I can't see putting in another restaurant to the detriment of existing businesses which are already there. You have a pizzeria, you have a Caribbean restaurant across from Pathmark, and you have another Caribbean restaurant right down the street.
Haitian restaurant.
What is it?
It's Haitian restaurant.
I'm sorry. So I don't know if this is really necessary. And again, I hate to, you know, get in the way of a businessman here, but, you know, the gentleman here drove up in a contractor truck. Is he going to stop being a contractor to operate his business? This whole thing just doesn't make any sense to me. And again, I'm very concerned about usage, the 20 seats versus a takeout. To me, that doesn't make any sense. You're either a takeout or you're a restaurant. If you have 20 seats and you have tables, then you're a restaurant. So you can't be both. It's one or the other. And I just think this thing needs a lot of work before you can approve it. You know, you have no parking. The appropriate parking just isn't there.
Okay, now you're repeating yourself.
Well,
I understand
I want to
your-
make sure that, you know, we understand that according to Mr. Shapiro, who was there, couldn't even turn around in the back lot.
I didn't guess that all of the board members have been there.
Okay. So I hope that you did notice that, and that is an issue. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Have any other comments from members of the public? Okay. All right, so now we discuss among ourselves if we have any debate or...
I have a question for Mr. Renda.
Okay.
Maybe it's evident in our code.
You need to speak into the microphone.
I have a question for Mr. Renda. Sorry. How long has this commercial district been a commercial district?
I couldn't tell you, but since I've been here nearly 16 years, it's always been a B3 zone.
It's on a commercial street.
The zoning in the area is what would be the west side of Valley Street in that area is a B3 zone, and the east side of Valley is a B2 zone. Immediately behind, going up the hill, behind the B2 zone is a two-family zone. That's where the residential zones begin.
Right.
However, the commercial zones do allow residents, typically in the second floor, the second story, or apartment building type uses. But I mean, if you look at the district use regulations in the back of your code books, if you have them, it lists what the permitted uses are in the zone, in the very back. And looking at the B3 zone, it lists anything permitted in the B1, anything permitted in the B2 would be permitted. And then it goes on to research, testing, light manufacturing, warehousing, express catering, carting, hauling, equipment storage, things like. So basically, the uses in the immediate area along Lackawanna Place, all of those are permitted uses in the B3 zone, as well as anything permitted in the B1, which is stores, restaurants, things like that, and in the B2, which includes the B1 and other types of uses. So there's a broad array of permitted uses allowed in the B3 zone.
Number 12 on that list, Sal, is restaurants, convenience stores, retail markets, catering kitchens.
Correct.
The restaurant's a permitted use.
Restaurant is a permitted use.
Fast food's a conditional.
Fast food is a conditional use.
So Sal, would the pizza place that's, 5 doors down from this is that a permitted use because it qualifies as a restaurant?
That's been a pizza restaurant
Right.
as long as I...
Well, if it were a brand-new application, would it be a permitted use?
If it was a brand-new application, it depends on the application. If they meet the conditions of a restaurant, if it's a sit-down restaurant with waiter service and, they provide their food on plates and not paper plates and things like that, then it would be considered a restaurant.
Okay.
But they don't have any parking.
And just to clarify, if this applicant was applying for restaurant use rather than a fast food use, they didn't have the counter, or they did have table service with plates and dishes and a dishwasher in the back, would the parking requirement be greater or lesser?
Oh, the parking requirement for a restaurant would be much less. It would be 10 or 11 spaces, or somewhere in that range.
I just wanted
Plus
to
the 2
repeat that.
spaces for the apartment upstairs in total.
One of the concerns that I have about these, there's multiple variances that are required in this application, and two that particularly concern me, and speaking to the board members here for y'all's consideration, is the 1,000-foot requirement from a residential area, which doesn't hold for a regular restaurant, but does hold for fast food. And again, I think that pertains largely to the traffic as opposed to smells. But then there's also the requirement of 500 feet distance from any other fast food restaurant, and there is a fast food restaurant, the pizza place, within 200 feet. Is that correct?
I don't know that would be, I'm not sure if the pizza place would be deemed a fast food restaurant or not.
It's a pizza place.
Right, but there are pizza places where you go sit down and they come and take
Well,
your
it's
order.
probably kind of like a hybrid operation like the Valley Barbecue. There's probably some tables in there, and people take out and a few people eat in.
It's possible.
On the other hand, if you go up South Orange Avenue, you've got Pirates Pizza and the Chinese place right next to one another, and they both have sit-down places and takeout too, and those would be fast food places, and they are. I can tell you that would fit fast food in our. I've been to both those places. They're within 500 feet of each other. You've got in that little Sloane Street area, you've got the Chinese restaurant tucked in there, and then you've got the fried chicken place right around the corner. Yeah, so we've got these very restrictive ordinances and yet routine violations of the same here in this town.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I just, my particular concern is if you are looking at this in a favorable light, and this applicant really I'm not sure what the lease says and such, but I am concerned about that potential extra use that you have in an area that's already constrained. And again, you look at those photos, and there's a lot of activity in the back there now with parking and what that's being used for. So I would suggest that that be factored in, whether it's something that is limited as a condition or whatever it may be. Again, I don't know whether there may be something in the lease that that would address that issue and limit whatever that use is back there. That may be the way that it's handled. I don't know, but I think it adds another element to this application.
Well, I'm concerned about that parking area back there too. I basically would assume if we were to approve this, that there would be no customer parking back there. I'm even concerned about any residential parking there, given there's an auto shop there, and cars moving back and forth in that garage there. It's a very loose situation. The landowner who's not here, which I think is a mistake, not here to testify about what that potential third use is, which always gives me concern of uncertainties that exist on a lot. So that's a concern I have also. And I don't think we'd be able to settle that here because the owner's not here.
Maybe something in the
Interesting
lease.
thing about the parking area in the back is that it currently exists. It's not striped, it's not managed in any way. It currently serves a residential use, and it currently serves the employees of the business that was there. So it's got a pre-existing situation that continues and will continue whether we provide an approval or not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to keep in mind with regard to that.
I keep going back and forth on this one. I read the application, I look at it from the street, and I don't know, I've been in town for 18 years and I drive by that site regularly, and I must live in a different town because I've always seen parking available, and maybe it's because it's always available in front of the park and I'm not focused on those three buildings, but then when I drive around the back, it looks like a free-for-all back there. It's like, I can't imagine how that space is going to function back there. And I'm not under the illusion that any customer is ever going to park back there. I think that would be a huge mistake, because I think it's going to be very difficult to control the auto body guys enough to get them out of the way so that these 5 spaces could exist, let alone what's going on in the garage, because we really do have 3 uses on that site. And we're not being told what the third one is. So I think while I kind of like the idea in concept, I just don't know that this is the right location.
If I can add, I'm dating myself, is probably 30 years in this town. And I think the only parking you see is probably by the park. I go back all the days of folks may not know the Sugar Park, Sugar Group. to clean the streets in this town. They own the place down there. And that pizza place is owned by all the, from probably like, from 11:30 to probably 1. The pizza guys meet there. That's like they hang out. Sorry, the UPS guys. So they all meet from Maplewood, so I know them all from there. Because when you need a package and I'm late, I know where to find them. So that's why I know what they're. But that place is very, very, very busy. Extremely, that's true.
But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
No,
I mean,
it's not.
a very busy street.
It's not a bad thing, but
It's
I'm
2
saying,
hou- it's
but I
2
can't
hour-
see,
it's
I
2
can't see
hour
no
street
folks.
parking.
Unless, I can't see where they're gonna park. That's my problem. I see how they're gonna park. And he said that he hopes that his best time is around lunchtime. And lunchtime, you know, from the kids, you know, and all their friends on the street there, and then on this side here with the pizza, with the UPS trucks.
But the kids, I mean, if it's kids are
Well,
walking.
Well, yeah, but yeah, it's a very, very busy street at lunchtime. From the kids to the cars, everybody running in and out. The parking is concerns me. Only thing that concerns me.
Yes, sir. Okay, do we have any other comments, questions?
Well, I'm just kind of where you are. You know, I could almost go either way because it's a commercial spot. And the building is not going to be a residential building. Some business someday is going to go there because it's a place for a business. And the question is, what kind of a business? And is it this board's responsibility to dictate what businesses can or cannot be located in a vacant building?
When they need a variance,
somebody could
yes.
Yeah, with a variance, yes, but any business that's going to move into that probably would need some kind of a variance. Somebody could be proposing to put in a bar and grill, a florist shop. I mean, it's going to be something.
Let me ask you a question. Sal, if a retail use went in there, since it was a retail use, they wouldn't be in front of us.
No, they would be continuing the retail use of pre-existing.
So if it was a retail occupancy, we wouldn't hear it.
What would their parking requirement be?
It's pre-existing use. It's been a store forever. They're allowed to, the property's allowed to be maintained as a
No, I'm just,
retail business.
you know, I understand, they wouldn't be in front of us, but and therefore, we
What would a standard retail
yeah,
parking
given
requirement
the
be?
square footage of space,
5 cars, 6 cars. It's 1,100 square feet?
One per 300,
Yeah, so 4 cars,
about 4 cars,
4 cars,
plus 2. for that
Which-
shift.
plus 2 upstairs.
so 6 cars. Right. So which they'd be non-conforming.
But again, if it was retail, the customers would be parking on the street, there would just theoretically be less of them.
Practically speaking, the parking lot in the back is not going to be available to customers.
Do we know why the owner of the building isn't here to address anything, the owner of this building?
I'm sorry?
The owner of the building that they're gonna put the place in.
He doesn't have to.
He doesn't have to be here.
All right, so look, we're kind of, it sounds like we're kind of on the fence here, and everybody's waiting for somebody else to tell them what to do. Again, it comes down to, it is a business, it's in a business area, and I understand that there's residences there, but it is a business area, and that's something this board has to consider, and there will be a business there at some point or another. The question is, given that this is a sort of hybrid fast food restaurant, does it run too much afoul of parking and other requirements? So, unless anybody has anything else enlightening to say, or if we want to, temporize, and if we want to hear something about that garage in back, if that makes a difference to anybody, I just assume that they have no parking. That's the way I would just assume they have no parking, and I'd have to base my decision based upon that.
I would agree with that. Aside from parking, I think they have parking for their employees and the residents, but they don't have parking for the customers, period.
Okay, so,
I just want to add, as I was thinking as during testimony, and that I keep coming back to, that the applicant is seeking a variance, and it's not our jobs to try to create a justification for, we're not willing this to happen. And I think there needs to be sufficient testimony, which would include a planner at least, perhaps somebody to opine who's qualified on a traffic perspective, so that the applicant meets its burden both with respect to the positive and negative criteria, because my feeling is at this juncture that has not been met, and we could sit and want somebody to come in, and we appreciate to try to promote businesses, but that's not our role here. Our role here is to take our ordinances and determine whether the legal requirements for both positive and negative criteria are met. And that's the concern that I have. We only had an architect speak. He was asked questions that were very relevant, but not related to his area of expertise. And we don't have the owner of the building here. We don't have a planner. We may need a traffic consultant. And I just don't see how, as a matter of law, that any of these burdens has been met by the applicant. And that's just my opinion over the last hour and a half.
thank you. Okay, do you want to make a motion to, then, since you're the only one who's been courageous enough to commit at this point, do you want to make a motion to not accept?
Well, I think what I'd like to do first is ask the applicant, given the sentiments that have been mentioned, and the neighbors who have been here for a long time have raised very serious questions, even if nothing else, with regard to the smoke, in addition to the traffic. And I guess the question is, and I'm only speaking on behalf of myself, I'm not speaking on behalf of the other members of the board, but do you want to be in a position to come back with more cogent testimony, or do you want us to vote tonight?
Yes, Commissioner, I would make the application that the hearing be carried so that we could come back with at least the owner and address some of the concerns that were raised here. Further.
And what about a planner? I mean, it seems to me that that's because, the language that was mentioned before, but it's a good thing, and maybe there should be enough parking. These are not legal criteria. It's
I
for us
understand.
And I'd like, as much as everybody else, to try to see something succeed in an appropriate manner. But if showing this photographs of that happen to be vacant, if the testimony and the observations of the landowners who have been here for decades is true, then any negative condition in terms of the parking is just going to get worse. It's not going to get better. So showing us these images, I don't think is really probative of the issues. It's my opinion.
I appreciate the opinion. I think you really cut to the heart of the issue, Michael. This is something we asked the applicant for, but I anticipated this, and I was disappointed to see a few grainy photographs taken it a couple times. It's y'all's job to provide proof. And we got a couple of photographs. That's not real great. I don't want you to go to great expense, but this is the kind of stuff I worried about. A small operation, this is what we would get, and this is exactly where I was worried we'd end up in this limbo here of lack of adequate proof. No comment, for example, about the 500 feet within other restaurants, and does that exist in other parts of the town? I really don't like that there's a potential third use, even though it's small. That little garage in back, that just gives me the heebie-jeebies. I even wonder if there's space for the two residents to park there. That this is just going to be used by the garage. There's a lot of uncertainty here, and if you all want to carry it, that would be okay by me. I think ultimately this board is still going to have to put our chips down in what may be an uncertain situation. So be prepared for that if you all do decide to come back. Is that what you'd like to do?
The request is to carry the hearing, yes.
What does the applicant need to do to help this board decide? So I don't want the, what do they need to do? They need to provide a more cogent testimony on parking?
I think that seems to be a significant issue. I think this issue of the smoke, I think, could be very significant, irrespective of what the prevailing winds. It could really disturb the neighborhood, and the parking is an issue. And I'm just, I also want to say that, as I think the chairman alluded to, this is just it's a tough burden on a lot of different fronts, and I'm also mindful of asking an applicant to come back, hire experts to come back, and we may not be that much more ahead of where we are now. So I just want to be respectful of that as well, because I think that the issues that have been raised here are not insignificant, and they may require significantly more preparation and testimony to convince the number of members of the board that need to be convinced.
I think it would be good, you don't like? I think it would be good to hear a little bit more about the cooking and the hood. And I know, exhaust hoods, you usually see them on the side or the roof of a building, and they're exhausting. But I think there's also hoods that can filter. And I don't know the process, but I know that there's different types of filtering so that what comes out of the hood maybe isn't as awful smelling, or, just a big aroma that you're going to hit as you're driving down Valley Street on a constant basis. So it might be good to have some testimony about the hood and the fan, not necessarily from the applicant, but from someone who supplies those kind of things.
The applicant might want to specify a particular type of hood, and it may be more expensive. I would also like to hear about that garage in back. I would like to hear about the presence or absence of other fast food restaurants within 500 feet of this application, as well as how it compares to the rest of the town. I would like to know about the parking in front of the park. My experience with that park is that it is often open, that there's a space there where people aren't parking, and that's parking space where people could park. So, we're potentially setting you up for, the applicant up for some expenses, and we're not guaranteeing anything.
I understand.
On the other hand, I think the sentiment of the board is you probably wouldn't get approved tonight if you're forced to vote.
I also don't want to be completely negative, because I have thought about thinking of barbecue and ribs. I could see myself coming home on the train and on the phone with my wife. What do you want to do for dinner? Oh, we can't go to the same place all the time. Well, how about picking up ribs? So there is a part of this that is, very appealing, and I think it could be a successful business as other similar ones have been in adjacent areas. So I don't want to be completely throwing cold water on. I just think we have a board. As a board, as you know, we're required to follow, legal principles and legal requirements. It's not just whether we like it or not. It's whether it's met the requirements. And I think the chairman and others have articulated the significant issues that we would appreciate more testimony on in order to be able to form a judgment.
Agreed.
Along the same lines, just to get more of a sense of the board, I'll just chime in myself. I really would, in general, look favorably upon a commercial use in a commercial district. If the commercial use is somewhat intense, if the district is intense already, that kind of thing. If you don't have that kind of use in that kind of a zone that's already got that kind of uses, where do you have it? Will Mr. Groman ever see a barbecue restaurant in town if not there? So that's, just in general, the area lends itself to a restaurant use, even a fast food use.
So you're looking for planning testimony along those lines?
I'm definitely looking for planning testimony along those lines.
Okay.
I think that the issues related to the site that our planner brought up relating to the garage, I think is a significant point that needs to be addressed. Whether it's an existing situation or not, the details of that situation should be outlined for us, and so it'll be good if the owner is there. I like that you guys put in lighting, which is something that I requested because I felt that it was kind of dark in that area. Personally, I would have liked to have seen more lighting on the north side of the building where that sidewalk that's owned by the town is, just so that you can have a passageway that's fully lit throughout. But just as a sense, this site may not be perfect for this, but it in many ways is based on the zone.
I'd like to see that actual deed restriction too.
That's which we had requested before, so it would be nice to see.
Anything else from our expert? Ms. Gruhl, is there anything else?
I don't know whether it's permitted, and maybe it's a redacted, but, you know, whether there are any lease provisions that would impact on what can and can't do, what the applicant can or can't do. I don't know whether there are. I'm not suggesting that any, you know, proprietary information be disclosed in a public manner, but maybe somebody can testify to that. Hopefully not, but I don't know, maybe in terms of the use in the back and the garage, there may be some provision in the lease that addresses that. I have no
Why is that our problem? It's the applicant's problem.
I think that the owner's presence would best address that.
However everybody wants to deal with it.
Right, and there was a question about the handicap parking and access by a handicapped person, especially if they had to go on town property. We have a lot of testimony about how chaotic that parking area is with all the commercial auto businesses, et cetera, adjacent to and on the site. To the extent that some kind of a reasonable solution to that issue could be arrived at, that would be good to see as well.
Okay, I think that's enough. All right, so we will carry this case to the next meeting, or do you want to carry it, you want to wait a little while?
The next meeting is 30 days?
Yes, it's next month.
First Tuesday.
First Tuesday. Do you want to wait? Can you get it done, or do you want to wait a couple months?
I think we can get it done.
Get it done?
Can we have the information 10 days ahead of time?
10 working days.
It's March 6th.
March 6th is the next meeting.
I need to speak to all of these experts and engineers. So may I suggest that if we could give us the next date, if I see there's a problem, I will contact the secretary and ask to carry it.
Okay.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah, it's okay. All right, so we will then anticipate March, it might be April. We want it 10 days before. Sal, you're giving me a quizzical look.
Well, from a notice perspective, I think you need to set it as the March date.
Okay, so we'll set it for March.
Right, and then
No further
should that
notice.
change at the March meeting, I guess you would carry it again, or they would have to reissue notices.
Okay,
So at this point, I'm okay without renotice.
Well, if there isn't a March meeting, they would have to renotice.
No, we can just post it.
Okay.
And the timeframe.
okay, so
Timeframe
we'll carry it
for
till
decision.
March.
I'm
Is there
sorry?
any time frame for decision that they have to agree to extend?
Statutory
Going to
time.
March, right?
I don't know when it was deemed complete.
Oh, well,
He's
you're requesting
asking-
the application be,
Carry, so we'll waive any precondition.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Thanks.
All right, so we'll carry that, and then let's move on to the matter of the annual letter then. So you all are through for the evening,
Great,
okay?
thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's quickly discuss, there's the annual letter that the board writes. I typically write it, and I sent it out to you all. There was one issue that Mr. Scala brought up that's come up in a couple applications. The interesting idea that in that one mixed residential business zone, you can have it was the one we saw recently, you can have a separate building with an apartment or a office building, but never the twain shall meet. You can't have the same uses in the same building, and that's what our ordinance says. Mr. Scala was suggesting that that doesn't make sense, although I understand why it makes sense and they want to have a transition. But I wanted to get the board's sense of, did you have any thoughts on that? Is that worthy of mentioning in that letter?
Were you concerned with them being on the same floor?
Certainly the same floor would be egregious. I don't think anybody wants them on the same floor. But the question is do we have an opinion that separation of uses by separate buildings is something that we think that the Board of Trustees should reconsider? I think the idea behind it was that by forcing separation in buildings, it makes it even more of a slower transition to a business area from a residential area, but it does kind of limit what can be done, because you can't have an office building on the first floor and residences above. Mr. DeScala thought that the Board of Trustees should change that. You can speak for yourself.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, we've seen a lot of applicants come in with houses in these mixed development areas, in these transition zone areas, houses or buildings that they would like to have more than one use in. And obviously, we're burdened, reasonably so, by applicants coming in, trying to make use out of existing situations that they're trying to improve on, which I don't see why they need a variance or why we would need to deny a variance request. I see most variance requests, unless they're on the same floor, being approved. So it seems like a significant amount of time on our part and our staff's part with regard to applications that we know kind of makes sense on an individual basis. And from a planner's perspective, I think that vibrancy in the town is a good thing. And the more people we have living in commercial areas, the more people we have using shops and storefronts and park space, et cetera, in the downtown area. It reduces traffic. It's a good thing. And that would promote that kind of a mix of use. Otherwise, I think that we run a risk of a lot of these buildings being torn down and being replaced by solid 100% office spaces. But I think it's, in general, I think it's a good idea to allow the mixed use in a zone that it's created for transition.
So you're concerned in a zone where both of those uses are permitted but not in the same building?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, because everything you read in planning these days is that they want the units with both uses, because during the day someone's in the building and during the night someone's in the building.
It makes a safer environment.
It makes a safer environment, it makes it a more lively environment, and you're bringing people back into the part of town that traditionally in the last 40 years has been empty at night.
So you would be for that?
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other thoughts on that?
I would be for it in a zone where both the uses are permitted separately. I mean, we should allow them to be in the same building.
I'm in favor.
Our planner's got something.
Ms. Rule?
Oh, sure, no worries. That zone was created a number
You
of...
speak into the microphone.
I'm sorry. That zone was created a number of years ago, prior to the concept of mixed use, where it really took off. And I would agree that the mixed use concept in one building makes a lot more sense, particularly in that, I know that area, that zone. It does make more sense, and it probably will create more reuse of buildings rather than tear down, because that zone actually did have some tear downs, and years ago, it did have tear downs. And I agree that that's not something that you necessarily want to promote.
Okay, thank you. So we have a consensus on the board that will mention that the Board of Trustees should consider amending that ordinance for that zone to allow mixed uses within the same, apartments and office buildings
Mixed
in the same
residential
building,
office type.
although not on the same floor. No, well.
That was my
it's letter.
recommendation. That was my recommendation. It's a good point you raised. I don't think it makes sense to mix them on the same
They
floor.
don't allow it in the central business district on the same floor, so why should we allow?
The central business district only allows offices and residential on the upper
Right,
floors.
so, well, it's, we're gonna say not on the same floor, so that's a good enough. All right, good, so, thank you.
Try.
Okay, anything else before we
Do you want
go?
to consider in your letter a suggestion that they improve the definitions of restaurants and fast food restaurants?
Well, I think it's
That's
really
next year's
something that
letter.
should be
That's next year's letter.
examined, because as someone who appears on a lot of these boards, places like Stoney's, Five Guys, Smash Burger, they're all these hybrid places. They're not sit-down restaurants. They're not fast food. Smash Burger, if you walk in there, there's not one piece of china.
Chipotle.
But you get it in a basket. So technically, by our zoning, it would be fast food, but there's no drive-through.
I would like, in this kind of case, I saw us totally sitting on the fence. It must have been painful for us, the way we're all sitting there. To take a look, go by the area, go into the back, look at different times of the day, and come back with a sense of yourselves of the traffic that's around there and the parking that's available. I think this is, from my experience of many years on the board, this is one of the most indecisive meetings we've had, and we're usually not this indecisive. So we need to do some diligence on our own.
Well, that's because the back of that site is like Mad Max.
I wasn't talking about the application, I really was talking about our definitions, because what was,
Doesn't fit either.
the fast food ordinance was passed in
Well,
'95,
let's
8
wait.
months before I started. so
I think we're going to wait on that. I don't know really, I don't have any suggestion to offer. If somebody wants to quickly give me a suggestion as to how they can modify these ordinances, fine.
I think you said it, Mr. Chairman, the conditional use standards for this hybrid are impractical
Yeah.
anywhere in town. They're just not
Maybe
gonna
that
work.
was the point.
They have to take a look at the model of what is considered a restaurant. What was a restaurant 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Things change over time, and, to absolutely require a sit-down,
As
table
opposed to
service.
fast food,
as
maybe we should create a hybrid.
Right. Maybe something in between there, that a lot of these restaurants that you're
Although,
seeing today.
Have you seen a hybrid
Yes.
on the books?
I think that, well, there are different ways of addressing it, I think. I would agree that there's a need to re-examine the definition and the conditions.
There's room for improvement.
I'm not sure.
There's room for improvement.
I mean, I definitely see that the ordinance did not want a
Burger King.
large.
Burger
chain.
Burger King.
Well, I don't want to, sort of malign any of our corporate partners. But they might sponsor me one day, who knows? I may yet make the Olympics.
Those kind of places would never look at a
Right
place
here.
like this.
Yeah, you know.
But that's and I understand that, but, this application is not that, and it could never be that, and we could, put constraints on it, so even if they buy the adjacent properties, it could never be that, but, I can mention that they might want to consider a hybrid. They haven't responded a lot to my previous letters, but nonetheless, I'll go ahead and do it. Okay, any other suggestions, comments? So we'll see you all next month. Thank you.